This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, and I am your host for this week's episode, Paul Jasley, filling in for Mike Rappin on a very momentous episode. This is it, the final episode of I Read Comic Books for the year 2025. We're going out with a big one, a special Goodreads episode. Of course, I can't do this alone. I'm joined by two novelty New Year's Eve party noisemakers, Brian Murray.
Hi.
And Zach McCreary.
Hi.
Not the enthusiastic noise I was expecting.
That,
yeah, like a champagne bottle popping or something like that. But no. It's a very subdued New Year's Eve for us here. But yeah, I wanted to say,
can put in the horns in the edit.
We're just snuggled in our pajamas in bed. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, in bed before 10 on New Year's Eve, as usual. So, obviously want to say Happy New Year to everybody who's listening. We made it through 2025, and if the calendar isn't lying to me, we'll be hitting episode 500 in a couple weeks here. So it's this very exciting time to be a fan of I Read Comic Books, to be on I Read Comic Books. It's wild. So yeah, thank you for everybody for the support over the past year, and we're looking forward to the next one. As I mentioned, we have a special Goodreads theme of the month for this episode. The December theme of the month was to read a new comic. Read a new comic from this year. Comics released in the year 2025. So we all read brand new comics here, and we're going to talk about them. I'm going to throw it over to Zach. Zach, Happy New Year. How have you been? What did you read for this episode?
Happy New Year to you as well, and to everybody out there. Hope it's a glorious evening. Be safe. First, let me say, I cheated a little by accident. This was completely by accident. So the first issue of the book came out November of 2024, but the rest of the books 2 through 6 came out in 2025. I didn't learn about this book until 2025, so I was just like, oh, this whole thing came out in 2025. So I apologize. I sort of cheated, but the bulk of it was real. I read Spectrum issues 1 through 6 from Mad Cave Comics. Have you guys heard about this book?
No.
It's a humdinger. So created by Rick Quinn and Dave Chisholm, Quinn writing and Chisholm on art. This book is like the three-way love child of Alejandro Jodorowsky, Mobius, and Box Brown. Like, that is how I felt about this. Like, the writing is gorgeous. The art is bombastic and colorful and unpredictable at times. The whole book is unpredictable. But at the same time, it can get a little confusing, and you might have to like double back, because there's a lot going on. Like, it's very busy, but I like that style. So like, I'm a Mobius guy, so that's cool with me. So yeah, the basic gist of the story is that there are these two girls named Melody and Ada, and their whole lives have led up to the events of this book, where they learn that there is an eternal cosmic war raging in secret across dimensions, across timelines, and at the core of that war is the art of music, as well as their connections to their fathers and their fathers' connections to each other. Other art too, but predominantly music. Like, there is mention of poetry and like playwright and stuff like that. But it's predominantly about music and what music can give you. One of the driving messages of the comic, like I said, is the idea that music often guides history. And one of the ways that comes across is when we'll suddenly jump into a very Box Brown style history lesson. So like, it's kind of in two pieces where you've got this actual story that's happening, but then along the way, sometimes there will just be these little interludes where you jump into a history lesson about a musician and like their most famous piece of music and how it affected the world around them, basically. But all of it is fake. Like, there's no real musicians. It's like this guy like took the time to fully like flesh out these artists and then tell their story in a couple pages. And the art does change to look a lot more like what you would get in a Box Brown comic, like the single art, like the single color, and the art gets a little bit more simple, like simplified. I hate saying it that way about Box Brown because I don't feel like his art is simple. You know what I mean? I hate saying it that way. I don't know how else to say it, but it looks a little more Box Browny.
Yeah.
Thank you, minimalist. I like that so much better. Yeah, it's very minimalist, and compared to the craziness of the other pages, and it's got the single art, color, and you get a little snippet about this person from history, and then it jumps you back into the story of Ada and Melody, and sometimes it connects to what's happening in their story, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's just kind of its own thing. It's almost like these two guys, because I know that from what I read in the back matter, Chisholm is a musician, and I believe he teaches music, and so he's got like a depth there, and I guess it really kind of felt like these two were almost writing a fictional manifesto of like why you should love music and how important music is, but they did it through the lens of a crazy galactic war, or like cosmic war. Yeah. It was cool. The layouts are so creative. The art is beautiful. It's a very crunchy read, like I was saying though. Like I feel like for anyone who reads this anybody who read this month to month, I feel bad for them, because I feel like I would have been lost book to book if I'd have to go back and reread each issue each month to remember what was going on. So I'm happy that I waited until it was all done and I collected and I got the trade paperback and read it that way. But even then, I kind of feel like another read is going to be necessary, because now that I understand what happens and I've got the flow, now I can go back and kind of catch things that I didn't before. And that's kind of the Mobius thing. Like, I don't know, you guys know Mobius's art and how like there's so much going on. So like I feel like that this book has that going on in the writing and in the art, where like multiple reads will get you more things. So yeah, I thought it was cool. If you're into that sort of thing, I think it's worth it.
It sounds like it's got something for everybody. Yeah.
It's got a lot. It's got a lot of stuff going on.
Sure.
Kind of makes me wonder if it might have been better as single issues. Like,
you think?
Read issue 1, and then when issue 2 comes out, you reread issue 1, then read issue 2. And
that makes sense. Actually,
everything that you've got.
Yeah, and by the time you get to the final issue, you are like fully locked in, and you understand everything they were getting at. That, maybe it would have been better doing a month to month. Now that you mention it, Brian.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, Zach. I haven't heard of this book, but I've read other stuff by Dave Chisholm. He did a couple like biographical comics about jazz musicians. He did one about Charlie Parker, and he did one about Miles Davis. I've read those, and yeah, his artwork is like, it's complex and it's vibrant, and he does a really good job of. It's the hardest thing in comics is to like illustrate how music feels, how it sounds, because it's a silent medium, and he does a really good job in those comics of like just capturing the feel of the music on just a static silent image.
That is something that I was thinking as I was reading it, was it's just how do you capture what music is in a visual medium? And you're right, he does a good job of it.
It's always like a tricky thing, because like there's a lot of comics that will have like a musical number, and it's like, it's clearly like, it's written in lyric, and it's designed to be kind of sung, but I have such a hard time like hearing it, what it sounds like in my head, or like what's the melody for this, and like for those books he did, like they're about real musicians, so he could just put on a Miles Davis record and kind of figure out what he was illustrating, so it helps. But again, like if you're someone who maybe isn't as familiar with jazz, or even some of the music, maybe the stuff discussed in this book, I couldn't imagine a better artist to illustrate that than Chisholm.
Yeah, I totally suggest you check it out, because I think it's up your alley. For sure.
Sounds like it. Awesome. And Mad Cave's got some cool stuff. It's one of those studios I have to check out more often. They did that book Mugshots from about a year or two ago that I absolutely loved. So good stuff over at the Mad Cave.
Agreed.
Not Man Cave, Mad Cave. Yeah. Cool. That sounds great. Is this a limited series, or is it continuing? Do you know?
It's over, 6 issues. So you can buy the collected version, and you're good to go. You got the whole story front to back.
Awesome. Well, it's on my to read pile for next year. Cool. How about you, Brian? Happy New Year. How have you been?
Thank you.
What did you read?
I've been pretty good. Just trying to stay warm as we get snow piled on top of us here in Michigan. I finally got around to picking up Assorted Crisis Events, Volume 1.
Nice. Yeah.
This The collected volume dropped back in September of 2025. This is written by Dennis Camp with art by Eric Zawatsky, colors by Jordi Belair, and letters by Hassan Othman Elhau. This is another book that is definitely like a dense read.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel bad. I don't want to give the impression that this book isn't fantastic, because like on a technical level, I can definitely like see and appreciate what it's doing. I just don't think I'm smart enough for this book.
I know what you're saying. I think you are. I know what you're saying though, because I kind of had the same reaction when I read the first issue. But
yeah, like it's one of those things where like it's doing a lot of cool like sort of mind bendy time travel ish, what is real, what is fake kind of stuff, and like I was confused, and I was confused because the book is trying to confuse me. But I'm not the sort of guy who likes to be confused and then like turn the puzzle over in my head until I figure it out. I read it and go, well, that didn't make any sense. How about the next one? That somehow made less sense.
Fair.
So there was a lot that I did enjoy though, especially like Jordi Belair always nails it on colors.
Yes.
But I think in this book especially, like there were a lot of these panels where one character would be done in just sort of like blue ink lines or red lines or something like that. And then there'll be another character who is just like fully shaded in with their own different color. So usually like red or blue are the big ones that I was looking at when this thought came to me. So I can't really recall if there were other good examples of it.
Sure.
But it's such a visually striking thing to see on the page.
Yeah, and I think I really enjoyed this book, but I think I did have the same reaction at the first issue. Just I wasn't quite sure where the through line was for me, and like the idea of the title implying like every issue is kind of like its own standalone. Time is breaking down, or someone keeps reliving the same moment of their life, and a lot of it is triggered by trauma, or it is inducing trauma in the person. So it's maybe not the most like uplifting or fun read at times, but each issue I think did have a hook in it that kind of kept me going.
And I think it's that anthology nature that kind of like threw me, because by the time I was like starting to get a handle on how things were working in one issue, we'd go into the next issue and it's completely different. So I was basically like starting over at square zero.
Yeah. So this book was on my radar, but I didn't know anything about it except that I was gonna read it eventually because I like that team. So that's all I had. And honestly, my brain was like, Assorted Crisis Events. I wonder if it's gonna be like a parody of like big event books or something like that. I was completely wrong, apparently.
Yeah, I also went into it thinking it was gonna be kind of like what you said.
Yeah. Because that the title sounds kind of like tongue-in-cheek, like, here goes the superheroes, they're gonna have a big event thing, but,
yeah,
okay, not that.
I thought it was gonna be one of those things where like they introduce you to characters and then just like shit goes wrong for those characters for 5 or 6 issues, and I mean that's kind of what happens, but not in the way that I was thinking of it.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a through line character, a mysterious character kind of pops up in every issue, but I think they're going to learn more about him as the story goes on. Like it's not as clear in these early issues. Right.
Oh. Yeah, he's a recurring character like the Ice Cream Man, and Ice Cream Man is a recurring character.
Right, exactly.
I was about to ask exactly that. Is it like Ice Cream Man? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I like about this book, again, like I think Dennis Camp is such a great writer. I really like the artwork a lot, and each issue does like play with formal design elements in a really interesting way to make the narrative work, because you're talking about what would time breaking down look like, and they do a good job illustrating that in the medium. But what I really like about the book is I like the sort of standalone stories, because each issue has a unique feel. Like there's one issue where it kind of is almost a parody of DC Earth 1, Earth 2, these parallel Earths, and then there's a environmental crisis on one of them, so all the people from the second Earth have to move to the first Earth. And how does that logistically work? The stuff that gets glossed over, it's like the stuff that gets glossed over while the superheroes are fighting that's happening to the real people in this world. Even though it's not a superhero book, you can maybe see it through that lens. So it's like, what are the economic, political logistics of the exact same planet sort of like merging with another one? You know what I mean? The Earth 1, Earth 2 thing. And like, I thought that's really clever. And yeah, it took me a few reads to kind of like get what the thing was, but I think overall it's actually one of my favorite books of the year. So I'm glad you read it, Brian.
Yeah, I definitely think that like if you're somebody with more patience than me, then I think there's definitely a lot you can dig out of this book. Unfortunately, I'm just not that guy.
Is this one wrapped or is it an ongoing? I believe it's an ongoing. At least there are more issues coming out. I think this volume is the first 5 issues, and the 6th just came out. At least I just grabbed it from the shop the other day. So yeah, got to find out what that guy with the rocket pack on his back, the jet pack on his back, is doing, and all the back of the issues. So yeah, I love this book. I think Brian. I can understand why you didn't like it. I meant, Zach, I think after hearing you talk about Spectrum, I think this book is also totally up your alley, just in terms of like the formal aspects of it and the sort of like playing with narrative that way.
Yeah, definitely. It's not what I expected that it was going to be, but yeah, I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, and I wonder if I would have had a different impression of it had I gone in expecting what it actually is instead of bringing in my own ideas of what I thought it was going to be.
I guess we gotta, and me, we gotta do more research, Brian. We're just going blindly into these things. Like,
Zach, I'd rather die.
I think that's part of the fun. And I think that's kind of the approach I took to the book I read, where I just like, it popped up in my radar on social media because it's a Fantagraphics book. I was like, oh, that looks interesting. I'll read it. And it's definitely not what I expected. And it was a total surprise. So the book I read is called Precious Rubbish. It was published by Fantagraphics back in April of this year. And it's a debut graphic novel from the cartoonist Kayla E. So it's not only a new book, it's a new artist. And I'll say this right up front. I don't want to bury the lead here. It's not an easy read. It's an autobiographical comic, and it bluntly addresses pretty difficult and possibly triggering content like alcoholism, self-harm, suicide, emotional and sexual abuse. But it's autobiographical. But the way it's presented, that heavy content that can be uncomfortable, the way Kayla E presents it is not in a straightforward narrative like an autobiographical comic normally would be. It's kind of it's designed to mimic the look and feel of like a mid-century kids comic activity book almost. Very simple, minimalist cartooning, as we said earlier, very heavy line work. The color palette is basically just bright blue, bright red, and then yellow. There are comic strips that are somewhat narrative, interspliced with like activity game pages. Like there's mazes, word searches, paper dolls you can cut out and play with. But all of that stuff is done in a way to present or explore the trauma that the cartoonist went through as a child. And it's that juxtaposition between like the fun activity and the heaviness of the content that I felt like was really engaging. And it's almost like the artist, when you read a book like this that kind of addresses this heavy issues, it's easy to kind of be a witness to it. By doing this, I think Kayla E makes you address it more directly, and that can be really uncomfortable, and it is at times, but it was so interesting to see someone play with that medium to do it. So it's like the comic strips are almost like fragments of memories, and they're kind of surreal. There's some non sequiturs. She uses like language from the Bible because her mother, who was abusive, was part of the Pentecostal church. So it's like all these layers of things kind of happening at once. And it's almost like mimicking the experience of half remembered traumatic memories. You know what I mean? And then, for example, and then the activity books, it's like you can play with these paper dolls, and it's a way to engage with how she was playing with different personalities to address or different ways of coping with the trauma. And then there's actually like fake advertisements sprinkled throughout the book for products to like mask trauma, like a invisibility helmet or a protein plus powder. There's a protein powder that includes vodka because she dealt with child alcohol abuse. So it's like there's a really like dark humor, like a black humor that runs through everything that I think the book needs to make it work. You know what I mean? So a lot of the artwork and activity pages are actually adapted from comics from the 50s and 60s, from art, like comics like Archie or Little Dot. And there's a whole list in the back of the book where she got the actual images that she repurposed for this book. It kind of reminds me of a Nancy comic, the way the artwork changes very little panel to panel. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And every time she draws her mother, the mother character is drawn looking away from the reader. So it's like it reinforces the idea of like abandonment or, you know, emotional detachment. And then I think like it's such an engaging way to do this because, like I said, this is not easy to read, and yet I couldn't put it down because I was so invested in the graphic design of it. I love mid-century graphic design, and it kind of mimics that. Like, do you remember being a kid and going to a restaurant and getting the activity like placemat with your set of crayons? Like, it looks like that, and it's like that's the kind of vibe for it. And you know, I think my one criticism of the book, and again, it's not a book I would recommend for everybody. Obviously, it deals with pretty heavy subjects, so take that into account. My one criticism is some of the design work. It's like the advertisements that they put throughout the book. It's like bright yellow text on dark yellow backgrounds, or the vice versa, and it's kind of difficult to read at times. And there's a lot of dense text in those ads. And it makes me wonder, I read this digitally, I got it through Hoopla. It makes me wonder if like the physical version would solve that issue. And it is a book that I would like to see the physical version of, because I think it's so much work was put into the actual design of it that it might look better as a physical book. So like I said, it's a difficult read, but I couldn't put it down. It's incredibly honest and personal, and the artistic approach is playful and inventive. And I think it's a really singular book that's funny, heartbreaking, at times horrifying, but very vulnerable and personal. It's probably definitely the most unique comic I've read this year, and it really pushes, I think, what you can do with comics as a visual medium. And I'm really glad I took the time to read it. And I hope that Kayla E., it's her first book that she's done, and I hope she keeps going. I hope doing that maybe brought some closure, because there's some very heartbreaking and difficult things that she dealt with, obviously, that she addressed in this book. But to have a book that's this like unique and vibrant from a new artist, it's really exciting. So I really enjoyed it. But like I said, I'm not one I could recommend to everybody. But yeah, worth checking out if you're curious.
It must be tough to come off a book like that and like work on something else as a creator. Like how do you change gears, or do you just write very good, very heavy stuff for the rest of your life?
You're right. Like, because it's all so heavy. How do you come out of that and like get picked up to write a superhero book or something like that after doing something so intensely personal? And I mean, maybe using that art style is what helped her get through writing it. You know what I mean? Like that bit of levity to it. And maybe that's the gateway out. Maybe that's the door out. But I'm fascinated by the idea of this.
Yeah, I think, again, like, this is another book that I think plays with narrative, and how do you tell a story but not in a linear narrative way, and like how do you convey those emotions? And I think using the medium that way, as we said earlier, is something that both you and I really enjoy. So I think you'd enjoy it a lot. But I know that, like, you know, making art is a coping mechanism. So it's like, this clearly was a book that, you know, was born out of that, and whatever difficult things she went through, it sounds like, you know, she's been able, through years of therapy or whatever, to get through that. But to be able to express it in this really personal way, I think gotta be helpful. And I think it's helpful to me as someone who doesn't really understand this. You know, I've never had this type of trauma, and I can only understand it through artwork, really, you know. And I think, like I said, the way the book is designed, it's almost like I don't say you're experiencing it with her, because obviously it's very different, but it made me understand the weight of that probably better than just reading a description would be, or reading a normal biography would, you know. You're
kind of getting an idea of, like, not just what happened, but how it affected her and how it changed the trajectory of her life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I always appreciate these kind of comics, like that, where the I mean, it's biographical, but like when the person really gets to put themselves into it, and you kind of get a piece of them in a way, like ducks or like Persepolis, but I mean, those are a lot more straightforward in the narrative and the storytelling, where it sounds like this is a lot more, not, I don't want to say creative, because that sounds like I'm poo-pooing the other ones, but like it's got a very unique style, and I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, and again, like I think even the title itself, Precious Rubbish, kind of introduces that. It's like the idea of just like these activity books were mass produced or maybe kind of like designed just to be one and done thing, and she's repurposing that, for this new medium. And it's like, part of me does want to, like, I was reading the book and like, it opens up like a word search, and the word search is all these like, it's incest, it's alcoholism, it's suicide, it's all these things that the book's going to address. And as soon as you see that, it's like, oh, this is going to be a difficult read. But that, I think that tension between the levity and playfulness of the presentation and the heaviness of the subject matter is what makes the book work. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Man, we really closed the year out for IRCB with like, we read tough comics. Do you guys read tough comics?
Yeah.
Challenge for 2026, listener.
Challenge 2026. Give us something fun to read.
Yeah,
exactly. Give me something.
We're gonna try and make you
please.
sad and confuse you.
Yeah. No, I think what's interesting is that we all chose books that I think are kind of like boundary pushing, or at least playing with the medium, or like you're talking about intergalactic or interdimensional wars. We got Brian with all these different crisis events. We've got personal trauma in this book. And I think it's a beautiful, that might too flowery of a word, but it's a great representation of the possibilities of comics as a medium to tell these different types of stories. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. When you hear stuff like that, like, not to, well, there was that dude with Bill Maher said, like, made the argument that comics are not literature, and I feel like this episode alone shows that comics can be literature. That there is a depth to comics, and you can push boundaries. It's just like any other art form, and that's why I love comic books.
That's why we do this show.
And for every precious rubbish, there is a Avengers versus Aliens.
Well, yeah,
for me to read.
So you got your popcorn flick, you got your A24 flick.
Something for everyone.
Something for everyone. Yeah,
that's what I love. It's so funny because like I try to keep up with Fantagraphics and other publishers and try to like read different stuff, and like. But boy, I've found like more and more, I think I've talked about this on the show before, like this past year, it's just been like, I've really just been reading a lot of Big Two stuff because it's like a comfort food kind of thing. It's like, if I'm reading the Justice League, I know exactly what I'm going to get. And I'm reading Batman, it's right in my sweet spot. And like, I feel like when I was looking at the end of the year lists that were coming out this past few weeks, I was like, boy, I didn't really read a lot of like the stuff I usually try to seek out, which is one of the reasons I wanted to read this. And like, boy, so different from, the Justice League stuff I like, but just as good and satisfying in its own unique way. And I think my approach has always been, I want to read the difficult, challenging stuff, but I'm also going to need to read Batman regularly as well to balance that out, So.
Yeah, balance, exactly.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you for sharing that stuff. Do you have any final messages? Any other books you want to shout out at the end of the year? Maybe another favorite, because I'll just shout out my favorite Batman book of this past year was Batman Dark Patterns. If I had to pick a book for my favorite of the year, that might be it. Top of your head, anything else you want to shout out in this last episode?
So I want to shock everybody here and give props where they're due to DC. I've read Absolute Batman Volume 1, Superman Volume 1, and Wonder Woman Volume 1. And I actually really liked them all.
Look at that.
Oh man, I was gonna say the exact same thing. Specifically, I was gonna shout out Absolute Wonder Woman. I have just been ride or die with that book from start to now. I was surprised at how much I loved that book.
Yeah. I think those books work well because they're pushing, they're different from the typical stuff. It's like they have really great creators trying out new ideas in the framework of a big 2 book. And it's like, it's what Marvel did well with the Ultimates. I think they're doing really well with Absolute stuff. I loved that Martian Manhunter book is an absolute masterpiece. And I think that is up there for one of my favorite books of the year. So if you read those other ones, check that one out as well.
That was my other pick for today. So
oh yeah,
if I hadn't read Assorted Crisis Events, it was going to be that one.
Oh, can I shout out one more book?
Absolutely.
I love Dynamite's Silverhawks comic because it's something
Yes.
that I never thought would ever exist, because I loved Silverhawks as a kid, but it was like such a short run show, and it was basically just them being like, hey, Thundercats really worked. What if we did Thundercats in space but birds? That's basically what Silverhawks was. And
Never heard of this.
oh, it's so Silverhawks, like, check out the theme song to that show. It is a bop. Like it's a good song. It holds up. But yeah, it's a fun book. It's Ed Brisson and George Cambadeas. Cambadeas' art is hit or miss for me, but I really like it. I think it fits well with this specific IP, and I like what they're doing with it. They're taking the Silverhawks and not like getting gratuitously adult and gritty and and stuff like that, but they recognize the age bracket that they're looking at. It's like 30-40 somethings who watched this brief television show in the 80s, and it's been a fun ride so far. So I accidentally brought it into existence. I'm convinced of this because on my old show, The Comics That We Love, I used to do an armchair publisher show where we took an old IP and me and somebody else would create our own versions of what we would do with it as a comic book. And a month later, This was announced, and it was exactly what I said I wanted. I said I wanted Silverhawks. I was like, I want it to be sci-fi Untouchables, like Al Capone and Elliot Ness, and then literally Ed Brisson said that he did sci-fi Untouchables. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is amazing.
That's fantastic. Wishing books into existence. That's the goal for 2026. The comics we want to read. Well, that's great. Cool. Well, I once again want to thank all of the listeners for sticking with us for 2025. It's like Shania Twain said, looks like we made it through another year. So thanks, everybody. I want to thank Zach. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Kait, for listening. Thank you, everybody on the show. I hope you have a wonderful New Year's Eve. Look forward to the big episode 500 coming in a couple weeks and another year of I Read Comic Books. And remember, until next time we talk, comics are good, and so are you.